Yo, what's going on, guys? Today I'm going to be giving my NFL DraftKings picks for Week 15 for the Week 15 slate. This slate's definitely interesting. Roster construction this week's definitely going to be interesting. The pricing's pretty tight just all around at each position. It's unlike last week. Last week we had Gio Bernard was kind of a free square at 3,100. That's not really the case this week. We don't have like any free squares. There isn't a ton of value. I feel like it's going to be pretty hard to fit in like 2 or 3 studs. Might only be able to get 1 stud in this week, at least as of now when I'm recording this on Thursday, because I'm not seeing a lot of really cheap value that I'm absolutely in love with. There are really good options like in the 5K, 6K range at each position, but those price ranges don't really allow you to get like Le'Veon Bell. So you're probably going to have to make some sacrifices this week, probably going to wind up playing guys we don't really want to play. But that's just the case with this slate. Pricing's really tight, not a ton of great value, like sub 4K that I see. Unlike last week, like I said, we had Gio, who was 3,100. He allowed you to get in like at least 2 or 3 studs in your lineup. But that's not the case this week. Definitely some tight pricing this week. So before we get started looking at this slate, guys, before we get started looking at quarterback, if you could drop a like on the video, I would really appreciate it. Make sure you hit that like button. And if you are new to the channel, if this is your first time watching a video on my channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications. So that way you'll never miss out on any of my new videos. You'll get notified every time I upload. But yeah, guys, looking at quarterbacks for this week. Up top here, we got Tom Brady going up against Pittsburgh in a potential shootout. This Patriots versus Steelers game is probably going to be pretty high scoring. Definitely going to want to get some exposure to it. I'll be saving Brady for tournaments. Obviously not a guy I'm going to be paying up for cash games. Always like to go cheap at quarterback. Brady's a good tournament option in a potential high scoring game. He could be a good play. Same with Russell Wilson. Price save Russell Wilson for tournaments as well. Russell Wilson's a guy that's been so good lately. Definitely a guy we're going to want to consider just week in and week out. You just look at his last 4 games, 32, 24, 24, and 24 DraftKings points. He has been so consistent. Pretty much any offensive scoring touchdowns that the Seahawks get, they're going to come from Russell Wilson, whether he's throwing the ball to somebody, whether he's running in himself. The Seahawks don't really run the ball a ton. Russell Wilson's pretty much chugs that offense. So I think he's a quarterback we can pay up for tournaments. If we can go there in cash games, I doubt we'll be able to just because there's not a lot of value. But if we can, I think I'd prefer Russ in cash if you're paying up at quarterback over Brady. But like I said, always like to go cheap at quarterback. And I feel like we are definitely going to have to do that this week since there isn't a lot of value at other positions. But both Russ and Tom Brady, good tournament options, especially Russ, the way he's been playing lately. Definitely a guy I wouldn't mind paying up for in some tournaments. And looking for mid-tier options, I think Big Ben is a really interesting tournament option in this mid-tier at 6,700, playing at home. We know Ben plays well at home. The Steelers play well at home. That's been the case this year. If you just look at the DraftKings scoring, he's averaged 23 DraftKings points at home this year. On the road, only 15 DK points. Big Ben's been playing really well lately, been looking like himself. Has 2 games over 30 DraftKings points in his last 4 games. Put up 28 against the Titans. And in a game that should be really high scoring, I think this is a great spot for Big Ben in some tournaments. 6,700, stacking him with AB. I know a lot of people are probably going to do that this week, but that stack has just so much upside. So I like Big Ben in tournaments in that mid-tier. Same with Cam Newton as well, who is listed as questionable, but I am expecting Cam to play this week. Also like Cam in tournaments. If we can fit Cam in cash, I think that is something we can do. This is a great matchup playing at home against the Packers. The Packers do not have a very good pass defense. Their secondary is not very good. This is a great spot for Cam. I wouldn't mind stacking him with Funches. I think that's going to be something a lot of people do. Really like that stack in tournaments. And we know Cam has so much upside, especially when it comes just to fantasy. He'll run the ball a ton. 95 rushing yards against Miami. Put up 35 DraftKings points in that game. Cam's a great tournament option this week, in my opinion. Really like him in that mid-tier. If I can go up to him in cash, I don't mind that at all. Really like the spot for him. Great matchup. Really nice price tag as well. Like Cam Newton at 6,400 this week. And then looking for our cash game options. This is where we like to go in cash so we can save money at quarterback, so we can fit in like Le'Veon Bell, the expensive studs that have such high floors and ceilings. And I talked about this guy on Monday. I still think he's a great option this week. Blake Bortles, 5,700. I think he's actually a great cash game play at his price tag. Bortles has been playing really well lately. Just look in the last 3 games, 23, 28, 18 DraftKings points. Has acquired 6 touchdowns in his last 3 games. So Bortles has been playing really well. This is a great matchup at home against the Texans. The Texans do not have a good pass defense. They've been really struggling lately. And anywhere we can save money this week, I feel like we're going to have to do it. So Blake Bortles at 5,700, definitely a good quarterback we can save on in our cash games so we can fit in the studs that we want to. So I think if I'm going sub 6K for a quarterback this week, I'm going to Bortles. I prefer him over Nick Foles. I prefer him over Mariota. Mariota's really been struggling lately. So the cheap option I like at quarterback this week is Blake Bortles at 5,700. But yeah, guys, what I'm seeing at quarterback this week, there's some quarterbacks I am looking to target. Let's go ahead and look at some running backs. Alright, so at running back this week, up top here we got Le'Veon Bell, 9,300, going up against the Patriots. If I'm paying up for a running back this week, it's going to be Le'Veon Bell. I'll just go up to the top and fit him in. This is a great game to get a ton of exposure to. So many good plays in this game. Le'Veon Bell obviously being one of them. And even though he is really expensive at 9,300 and there isn't a lot of value, I think we still want to try and force him in, especially in cash games. Just look at the floor this guy has. He's pretty much locked in for 10, 15 DraftKings points just about every game. He has a 30, 40, 50 point ceiling. He has potential to get that much. If you look in the last 3 games, 29, 32, 39 DraftKings points. I don't think Bell has like a single game this year under 10 DK points. Or he had one game this year earlier against Cleveland, 7.7, but 13, 21, 37, 19, 31, 25. The guy's just so consistent. Great cash game option. We all know this. Great tournament option as well. Le'Veon Bell, definitely a stud. I'm going to be jamming into lineups this week. Prefer him over Kamara. Probably prefer him over Shady McCoy, even though McCoy's in a decent spot. I think I'll just try and find the salary to get up to Bell. If there is any running back that I would save on, if I didn't want to play Bell, I'd go 2K cheaper, about 2K cheaper. And Leonard Fournette, I think, could be a guy we can save on. If we do want to fit in a stunning running back, but we don't want to go up to Bell, I like the spot for Leonard Fournette. He has a really nice price tag at $7,500. He is listed as questionable as I'm recording this on Thursday, but I would imagine Fournette plays this week. And he is another guy we always want to consider in cash games just because he gets so much work, has a very high floor. If he finds the end zone a couple times, he'll put up a ceiling game for tournaments where he gets you like 25, 30. We saw that against Seattle. He found the end zone in that game and put up 24.9 DraftKings points. So I like Leonard Fournette at 7,500. You don't want to pay up to the top for Lev Bell. I don't mind going 2K cheaper on playing him. And then looking for RB2s that maybe we can pair with our stud running back. I think there's a clear RB2 option at 5,800. Kenyan Drake this week. Probably going to be one of the cash game locks if there is a lock this week. I think it is Kenyan Drake, at least when it comes to cash games. Just at his price tag, the workload this guy's going to get, as long as Damon Williams remains out. In his last 2 games with Williams out, Drake's gotten 23 and 25 rushing attempts, has also seen 5 and 6 targets as well. So he's getting a ton of carries. He's involved in the passing game. And in his last 2 games, he's put up 26 and 27 DraftKings points. So the guy's been playing so well lately. Great matchup against Buffalo, a very bad run defense. Love Kenyan Drake as an RB2 option. Probably going to be pairing him with Le'Veon Bell in cash games if I can fit Bell in. I think Drake's the guy to go to if you're going to that mid-tier. I probably prefer him over McCaffrey. I think McCaffrey's in a really interesting spot for tournaments. But for cash games, I think the clear option there is Kenyan Drake at 5,800 if you're going to that mid-tier. And if we are trying to go cheap here, there just isn't a lot of value that I'm absolutely in love with. The cheapest guy that I like probably be Alex Collins at 5K going up against the Browns. Not the best matchup. The Browns do have a solid run defense. They're definitely bad against the pass. That's where we usually like to attack the Browns is through the air. But Collins has been getting a ton of work lately. He's also getting some volume in the passing game. 7, 2, 2, and 2 targets in his last 4 games. 17, 13, 23, 27 DraftKings points. He's been getting a lot of carries. He's been getting most of the goal line work. So I really like the spot for Alex Collins at 5K. I think he is a cheap option we can consider. But looking 5K and under, there's just not a lot of options I really like that I really feel confident in. Unless some injury news breaks on like Sunday or Saturday or something, we can play one of these cheap options. Not really seeing a lot of value at running back that I like, sub 5K. I know KERWYNN Williams has been playing really well lately. He's only 4K going up against Washington. I know he's had some solid games. At this price tag, we need about 12 DraftKings points for him to return cash game value. And in his last 2 games, he's put up 9.7, 9.8 DK points. He's been getting a lot of work, 16 and 20 carries in his last 2 games. If Adrian Peterson is out again, KERWYNN Williams, I guess we do need to go that cheap. Could be an option of 4K, but definitely not a guy I'm just forcing in lineups. Definitely not a great value option in my opinion. But he is there if you want to go to him. I think the cheaper option or the option that I'd probably prefer if you're going cheap would be Alex Collins at 5K. But that's what I'm seeing at running back this week, guys. Let's go ahead and move on to wide receiver. Alright, so at wide receiver up top this week at this position, we got Antonio Brown here. 9,100 in a good spot against the Patriots. I said this in my video on Monday. If I'm just choosing one of the killer bees to pay up for, I'm definitely going to go with Le'Veon Bell over Brown. But if you're playing Big Ben, I would imagine you probably want to stack him with AB. But if I just have to choose one, I'm going with Le'Veon Bell. If I'm going to spend 9K or more on somebody, it's probably going to be him. So I'm not going to have the salary to fit in Bell and Brown unless some really cheap value opens up. But we all know Antonio Brown's a great play this week if you can fit him in. We do have some options, though, that are cheaper at wide receiver that we can go to. I really like the spot for Michael Thomas at 7,400 going up against the Jets. Michael Thomas, definitely a guy I'm considering in cash if I can fit him in. The guy's just been so consistent just all year. Last 4 games, 15, 10, 18, 30 DraftKings points. The targets have been there all year for Michael Thomas. And I would imagine the Saints are going to put up plenty of points in this game. So I like this spot for Michael Thomas. The Saints are playing at home. We know they play well at home. I think he's a good option. You don't want to pay up for AB. You need a guy that's a little bit cheaper. I really like him. Like Adam Thielen as well. I would say Thielen's in a little bit of a tougher spot going up against Cincinnati, but he is another guy that's been so consistent lately, been playing so well. I think I prefer Thomas for 200 less, but Thielen and Thomas, 2 good pivots off of Antonio Brown if you don't want to pay up for AB. And then looking for options in this mid-tier that we can target at receiver. I talked about Cam Newton at quarterback. Really like Devin Funchess, pairing them two together. I think that's a great quarterback to wide receiver option that you can go to in tournaments. Funchess has been playing so well lately with Kelvin Benjamin gone to the Bills. The targets have been there, 6, 12, 7, and 7 targets to his last 4 games. 26, 20, 16, 14 DraftKings points. Great matchup against Green Bay. Like I said earlier, they have a bad secondary, not a good pass defense. This game has a lot of shootout potential, especially with Aaron Rodgers looking like he's going to return for this game. This game could definitely be high scoring, could be a very nice game to stack up. So I like this spot for Devin Funchess at 6,600 in that mid-tier. Then a tournament option that I'm absolutely in love with for tournaments this week is Jordy Nelson at 6,300 going up against the Panthers. It looks like Aaron Rodgers is going to return for this game. So going to Jordy Nelson, who has just not done anything lately. I really like going to Nelson this week in tournaments, maybe even pairing Rodgers and Nelson. I feel like nobody's going to do that because obviously Rodgers is coming back from injury, and Jordy Nelson just hasn't done anything with Brett Hundley in at quarterback. But I did see something on Twitter where Aaron Rodgers said that he's going to look to get Jordy the ball, or like Jordy has some juice left and Aaron Rodgers is going to look to fill him up or something like that. It was something weird, but obviously with Rodgers coming back, that's a big boost for Jordy Nelson. We saw this guy be like 7, 8K pretty much to begin the year with Rodgers at quarterback, and Jordy Nelson was crushing just about every game. He was like 7, 8K pretty much every week, and then his price tag dropped a ton with Hundley in at quarterback. It did rise with Rodgers looking like he's going to return. So maybe that will keep people off of Jordy Nelson. I think he's a great tournament option. I doubt I'll be going there in cash games, but going Rodgers to Nelson, I feel like nobody's going to do that this week, and they're in a good spot against Carolina. So I like Nelson in that mid-tier, especially for some tournaments if you want to pair him with Aaron Rodgers this week. And then looking for other mid-tier options, right now as I'm recording this video on Thursday, Marquise Lee is questionable versus Houston. I am expecting Lee to play for this game, and if he does play, I think he's a great option in this mid-tier. Pairing him with Blake Bortles, definitely something I don't mind doing even in cash games. Lee's just been so good this year, especially as of late. You just mark out that game against Arizona where he had to go up against Patrick Peterson. He's seen 9 targets against Cleveland, 10 targets against the Colts, 6 targets against Seattle, 21 DK points against the Colts, 11 against Seattle, 10 against Cleveland. Lee has solidified himself as the number 1 receiver for Jacksonville. Obviously, Jacksonville, they do have other options. They got D.D. Westbrook. They got Keenan Cole. Both of those guys have been playing well lately. But I think Marquise Lee's still the number 1 option. He's still Blake Bortles' go-to guy. So I like him at 5,800. If you want to pair Blake Bortles with the receiver, I think he'd be the guy I would go to. But you can save some money and go to D.D. Westbrook. Westbrook's 700 cheaper. I know Keenan Cole's really cheap. He's more of a tournament play, though, because he doesn't really get like a ton of targets. Pretty much all the targets go to Lee and Westbrook. But last week, Keenan Cole did catch like a 60, 70-yard touchdown bomb. So he could be a tournament option pairing with Bortles, but I think I'd go with Lee if you're pairing someone with Bortles or D.D. Westbrook. And then looking for receiver options for value that are 5K and under. I talked about this guy in Monday's video. I think he is a value option we can consider. Randall Cobb at 4,900 as a really cheap option could be in play here. Obviously, with Aaron Rodgers coming back, that's going to help all the Packers receivers. Randall Cobb is one guy that really didn't see much of a price increase. He's still dirt cheap. We know when Rodgers was healthy earlier this year to begin the year, Randall Cobb was consistently being priced 5 and 6K in that price range. and he was consistently just putting up 10, 15 DraftKings points, it seemed like, every week. Obviously, with Rodgers getting hurt, that definitely hurt Randall Cobb. He hasn't been performing well lately, but if Rodgers comes back for this game, and like I said, he is expected to, I do like Randall Cobb as a cheap option, especially in tournaments at 4,900. I feel like a lot of people aren't going to be on these Packers guys just because they haven't been performing well lately. But Rodgers can totally rejuvenate that offense. Going with Randall Cobb at 4,900 as a cheap option, I think does make some sense this week. And then the final receiver I like for value this week is Paul Richardson at 4,600 going up against the Rams. I think Paul Richardson's just a guy you can go to if he fits, if you need to go this cheap. Obviously, he's not a guy I'm just trying to force into lineups this week. But he's been really consistent lately. He's been getting the targets, 10, 11, 2, 16 DraftKings points. Obviously, that 2-point game was pretty disappointing, but the targets have been there lately for Paul Richardson. 8, 7, 4, 7 targets his last 4 games. If you need to go this cheap at wide receiver, I don't mind him at 4,600. I'm not seeing a lot of cheap options. I really like a wide receiver like sub 5K. I think this is a position you're probably going to the mid-tier. There's some good options like in this 5K, 6K range. If you're not paying up for like Michael Thomas or Antonio Brown, you got like Marquise Lee at 5,800. You got D.D. Westbrook 5,100. Marquise Goodwin's been playing really well with Garoppolo at quarterback. You can go to him at 6K. Jordy Nelson for tournaments. Devin FUNCHESS 6,600. So I think we're probably going to the mid-tier receiver. That's where I see a lot of the good options this week. But yeah, let's go ahead and move on to tight end. All right, so at tight end for this week, I do like one of the expensive options here. Obviously, we know Gronk is a good play. I don't have to tell you that Gronk's a good play. You can play him in tournaments. Won't be going there in cash games because of the salary. If I can go to Zach Ertz in cash games, I will be trying to do that this week. Ertz is very cheap at just 6K in a great matchup against the Giants. We all know that Carson Wentz is done for the season, so that's probably going to hurt Zach Ertz. That's probably one of the reasons he's only 6K here. If Wentz was playing, Ertz would probably be close to 7K. But I feel like with Nick Foles at quarterback, he's probably going to chuck down a lot to the tight end. So Ertz should see plenty of targets even with Foles at quarterback. And in a great matchup against the Giants, he's a tight end that I don't mind paying up for in cash games if I can go to him. Obviously in tournaments, we know Ertz has so much upside. Him and Gronk are great tournament plays regardless. But I don't mind paying up a tight end this week, going to cash game or looking for a cash game option. Zach Ertz at 6K in a great matchup I think does make sense. But if we are looking for cheaper options at tight end, maybe if we do want to go cheaper for our cash games, there are a couple options like in this mid-tier, cheaper end of the mid-tier we can target. Vernon Davis at 3,900 I think is a guy we're going to want to consider with Jordan Reed done for the seasons. Vernon Davis just going to continue to see targets week in and week out with Jordan Reed out. And he is very cheap this week at just 3,900. He's coming off some pretty rough games. I know he was very highly owned against the Giants. I think that was the Thanksgiving Day slate. He didn't do anything that game. Then against Dallas, he only got 3 DraftKings points. Did sort of rejuvenate himself last week against the Chargers, getting 10 DK points. Got 7 targets in that game. So I definitely like Vernon Davis as a cheap option we can go to at tight end at 3,900. We do have Ben Watson in a great matchup for 100 less, going up against Cleveland. If you just look at Ben Watson's game log, the guy just doesn't have a ton of upside. Definitely not a tournament option. I think if you want to go there in cash, I guess you can. You need about 10, 11 DraftKings points for him to return value on the salary. Obviously, if he finds the end zone, he'll probably get there. I know Cleveland's been allowing like the most touchdowns to tight ends this year, I believe. Either them or the Giants have allowed like the most touchdowns to tight ends. So maybe if you want to go to Watson, you're probably going to need him to score a touchdown to really pay off this price tag. He's only got a couple games this year, like over 10 DraftKings points. I prefer Vernon Davis for 100 more if you can get up to Vernon Davis. But I guess Ben Watson is fine in a great matchup against Cleveland. And that's really all I'm seeing at tight end that I really like this week. This is definitely a growth position. I think we want to pay up for Zach Ertz here if we can. If we need to go cheaper, I guess we can go to like Delaney Walker at 5,200. Maybe Jimmy Graham if he plays against the Rams. I know Jimmy Graham's coming off a dud game against Jacksonville where he didn't catch a single pass. He's only 4,900. He could be a cheap option. Talked about Vernon Davis, Ben Watson for cheap. I know Jesse James is coming off a really good game on Sunday night against the Ravens, I believe. He had a really nice game. He's very cheap at 2,900 in a potential shootout. He could be a cheap option. But I think we definitely want to pay up for Zach Ertz here if we can. And if we need to go a little bit cheaper for a cash game option other than Ertz, I think we can go to Vernon Davis, 3,900. But yeah, guys, let's go ahead and move on to defense. All right, so at defense this week, I don't like to talk too much about the expensive options here. Because we all know Jacksonville, they're a great option if you can fit them in. The Ravens going up against the Browns are a great option. The Saints going up against Bryce Petty is a great option to pay up for. But I do like to go a little bit cheaper at defense. Defense, tight end, and quarterback are usually the 3 positions I like to save at in cash games. So looking for maybe some options in this mid-tier and like sub 3K that we can target. In this mid-tier, I really like this spot for the Vikings playing at home against the Bengals. I think the Vikings are in a really good spot here. The Bengals just looked terrible last week against the Bears. They didn't do anything offensively. And we know the Vikings have one of the best defenses in the NFL. They're playing at home here. This is a great spot for them. They're a great defense in tournaments because they can force turnovers. They can get pressure on the quarterback. So I definitely like the spot for them at 3,500. I think they're the option I really like in that mid-tier. I'd probably prefer them over the Bills, probably prefer them over the Seahawks. Like the Vikings at 3,500. I think you can go to the Eagles for 100 more. Going up against the Giants. We know the Giants have been really struggling this year. The Eagles are definitely in a good spot. But I think I would prefer the defense playing at home for 100 less. So the Vikings are the main defense I really like in that mid-tier. And they may be looking for value 3K and under. Like I said before, I am expecting Aaron Rodgers to return. Obviously, if we get breaking news on like Saturday or Sunday and Rodgers isn't going to play and Brett Hundley's going to start again, the Panthers are a great option at 2,900. But I'll only be going to them if Aaron Rodgers is out. If we are looking for other defenses sub 3K, not a lot of value defenses I really like. I think the Redskins are definitely in a decent spot playing at home against Arizona. I know Arizona and Blaine Gabbert did take a ton of sacks in their last game against Tennessee. I think Gabbert got sacked like 5 or 6 times, might even been more than that. So their offensive line has been struggling lately. The Redskins are playing at home. They're very, very cheap. They could be a cheap option we go to. Sub 3K if we do need to go cheap at defense. If you want to take a flyer on the Giants at 2,500, I don't mind them going up against Nick Foles. I don't think Nick Foles is like this trash quarterback by any means, but he is going to be making his first start of the year. And defense is so unpredictable. It's so hard to predict like which defenses are going to put up the big games, which defenses are going to get the defensive touchdowns. It could be the Giants. They're playing at home, 2,500. If they get a pick 6, they're obviously going to return value on the salary. So I think they're the cheaper defense I like. Them and the Redskins are probably the 2 value defenses I would go to sub 3K. Maybe even the Browns going up against Flacco. They are another cheap defense I think does make sense at 2,600. But I definitely like paying up for here if you can. If you can go up to the Jaguars, Saints, or Ravens, I think they're the go-to options. The Vikings are a decent, cheaper option off of the expensive ones at 3,500. I think they're a go-to option in that mid-tier. And then obviously, like I said, with the cheaper ones, we got some cheap defenses sub 3K like the Redskins, the Browns, even the Giants. I think you can go to this week. But yeah, guys, that's what I'm seeing in defense for this week. I think that is pretty much it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I do really appreciate it. Make sure you hit that like button if you haven't already, and make sure you subscribe to the channel as well if you haven't already. Be sure to turn on notifications so that way you'll never miss out on any of my new videos. And if you haven't followed me on Twitter yet, make sure you follow me on Twitter at the DFS_GO. If you have to ask me any questions, feel free to hit me up on Twitter or just leave a comment down in the comment section. We'll be sure to get back to your question. But yeah, guys, I think that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching, and good luck this week, guys. Peace.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Yeah, she shaking fast. Yeah, she dropping slow. What? Yeah, neck on fro. Whoa, 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 whoa.